Hello, Sarah. Delighted to be chatting with you. Myself and Steve Evans here.
Hi,
Hi.
Sarah. Good to meet you. You all
Hi.
right?
So nice to meet you both.
Superb. So, leading question then. You're in Sweden. So, how is it in Sweden? Is it cold? Colder than Britain? We've had -2 today. So,
I think we just beat you. I think today was -3. So, and we also got some snow last night. So it's very
oh,
cold.
well, we're due some snow tomorrow evening if the weather forecast's right, which it very rarely is. But yeah, we might get some snow, especially on the hills tomorrow evening anyway. So yeah, I thought you may be much colder than us, but it doesn't appear to be that much at the moment. But I'm sure it will be in a few weeks.
Oh, just give it time. Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So how did you end up? Because you're American, but you
Yes.
transitioned to Sweden. Was that for work or for social reasons, or for what reasons was that all about?
So it's a couple different reasons, actually. Obviously, I can't be straightforward with my answer here, but my husband is from Sweden. So that's kind of the short of it. And we plan to spend a year here because we met in America, we were living in America, and I wanted to kind of experience Sweden. And then in addition to that, I was able to secure a research grant, which allowed me to work over here for the year. So it was kind of a mix of a couple different things, but we've been here since April, I want to say. So it's been really nice.
You're an attorney and a law professor. Are the two careers, are they interlinked? Do you teach law to student attorneys?
Yeah, so I'm basically a law professor. I'm a barred attorney, and I don't really practice anymore. I write legal briefs and I do legal research for a firm that I used to work for a few years ago. I kind of do that part time, but my full time job is actually as a law professor. I'm employed by the University of Louisville in Kentucky, back in America. So I've been teaching remotely this year, but I teach law students.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
So turning to writing crime thrillers, what made you decide to write crime thrillers or write in the first place?
So I mean, I'm a huge reader. I've always been a huge reader. I've loved to read since, I was able to read. And writing, I don't know, I wrote a little bit when I was younger, but it was never really seemed like a feasible, career option, I guess, for me. But for some reason, when COVID hit during the pandemic, I started thinking about it really seriously. And I was thinking, I love to read so much. I have some ideas. Why not just, give it a try? And it was also a way for me to, during the pandemic, during COVID, travel was impossible. And it's something that's a huge part of my life. And kind of writing about some of my past travels, I found was a way to, find a bit of escape and kind of reconnect with that bit of my life during lockdown.
Okay.
Righty. So I'm assuming that one of your hobbies is probably traveling, and if you like traveling a lot, so you would have really, really missed it during COVID,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yes.
I can
At the
tell.
time, my husband and I, we were living in a one-bedroom apartment in North Carolina back in the States. So we were pretty much confined, like everybody, to that apartment and our daily walks around the neighborhood. But other than that, we weren't going anywhere.
Can I ask about moving on to the novel shortly? How did you connect with Transworld Penguin, one of the biggest publishing houses in the world? Did you send them a speculative letter? Did you apply to several other publishers?
So it was actually a pretty extensive process. I think it was I want to say summer of 2021. I began querying literary agents. And then I was lucky enough to secure a UK agent who to represent me, which was, a lot of luck and a really great find. And I found a wonderful agent. Her name is Kate Burke at Blake Friedman Literary Agency. And I actually worked with her to edit the dive, to edit my manuscript for close to a year. So it was a pretty extensive process. We did a lot of edits, a bunch of big rewrites. And then in June of 2022, she sent it out to publishers.
Okay.
So she kind of controlled the whole submission process. She has tons of connections with, editors and publishers, both in the UK and the US.
Yeah.
And she ultimately connected me with Transworld, which has been, a dream come true, really.
Yeah. Can I ask you, the Blake Friedman, I think they've got connections with a lot of film companies as well.
Yeah.
I'm maybe jumping ahead of you, but
Yeah.
is any,
I know what you're going to ask.
I think you might suspect what I'm going to ask, Sarah.
I might.
Really?
So they do have a film. They have a film rights department.
Yeah.
And I think that they're in the process, from what I have heard, they're in the process of shopping those film rights for the dive out. So that's super exciting. The film and TV rights. So
I'm such a mud. Yeah.
What's that?
Amazing. That is amazing. Congratulations. Well, hope it comes off anyway. Yeah.
Yes. I hope I can accept those congratulations in the future. But yeah, so huge fingers crossed for that.
Definitely.
Yeah. So just stepping back a bit, obviously one of your hobbies is traveling, the other is scuba diving. And this is how all this story came about, isn't it? Because you went to Thailand and you discovered about these two backpackers who were murdered potentially, was it? And that's what your book's based on, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When I was, I think about mid-20s, I went, myself and a couple of friends, we went to Thailand for a 2-week trip, and we ended up staying at a resort on honestly, the most beautiful island, the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. And we got scuba certified there, and it was a dream come true, like complete paradise. And then a few days into our trip, we were talking with one of our, dive instructors, and he brought up that there had been a double murder on the island, the year before we had been there, right down the beach from where we were staying. And it was just so jarring to, think about a horrible crime being committed there. And I don't know, I can't remember if it was actually ever solved. I think they had solved it, but there was a lot of kind of sketchiness surrounding the murders and surrounding, the arrests and all of that. And then when I started looking into it, I don't know how truthful this is, but I found a very, we'll just say, sketchy article online that alleged that there had been a number of other tourist deaths on the island previously that were all a bit suspicious. And that just kind of got my mind really running. And I never was able to stop thinking about it until I started writing about it.
I love the tagline, "The guest list meets the beach." Brilliant.
Thank you.
Did you bring that up, or was it the agents? Did you make that connection?
I can't remember actually if it was, I think I used either one or two or both of those books as comparisons to mine when I was querying it to my agent.
Yeah.
But I'm not entirely sure. I think my publisher may have come up with that specific tagline. But I mean, they are both, two of my absolute favorite books. So I love it.
It's a great selling point. You'd buy the book based on that. I would anyway.
Thank you.
It sounds great, doesn't it?
It does.
And again, the cover, there's lots of stuff on the cover, which is behind Terry there. Did you think of that? Or was that the publishers as well?
I feel like I can't take any credit for all of this amazing stuff.
You wrote it. You wrote the book.
Yeah.
Some credit.
But they came up with the cover at Transworld, and they showed it to me, and I absolutely loved it. So yeah.
A big leading question, because as I can see just behind Terry there, coming 11th of May 2023.
Oh, yeah.
That's quite a long way off. Now, this book is ready, isn't it? So why the delay? Is it publishing rights and the way publishers operate, or is it just the way it needs to be?
So I think a lot of it is publication, and I just think the whole publishing process is generally quite long. So like I said, I think I signed with Transworld July maybe of this year, and it's going to be published in May. And I've been told that's an extremely quick
That
turnaround.
is quick, actually. Yeah, we hear
Right.
writers saying that waiting over a year, but that is
Right.
relatively quick.
Yes, exactly. So I actually am being published by a US publishing house as well, and that won't be released until spring or summer 2024. So I think that's actually a lot more typical. But with regard to the 6 months, you know, that's still out and we have the proofs and all of that. I'm still doing, you know, like the very final edits. So there are things that are still being, you know, that the editors are still catching and small tweaks and all of that. But also I think a lot of it is marketing and publicity time for them to kind of get the word out and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's sort of consistent with what we hear, to be honest. Yeah. But I was thinking, you know, sometimes you get it in your head that the book's there on the shelf, especially after we've seen your video on Twitter of you opening the package with the books. And you think, there's the book, so why aren't I launching it now? You know, that's right. It's so frustrating in my head. Yeah.
Yes, and I will say, so I have, I guess the blurred background isn't doing me any favors here, but I have the proof. I think this is what I was opening the other day, which was, you know, extremely exciting.
Magic moment for you.
Right, if you couldn't tell from my, you know, crazy facial expressions in that video. But this is actually just the advanced reader copy. So these were sent to, I think, like a bunch of bloggers and book reviewers and other authors to basically generate interests and get a few blurbs. The actual copy that comes out, the hardcover, is going to have that cover behind you and be slightly different as far as formatting and all of that. So that's, I suppose, another reason for the 6 months.
Okay. Can you tell us what the book's, well, without any spoilers, just give us the gist. Is it related to these murders that you experienced in real life?
A little bit, kind of. So it's based, it's set in a fictional Thai island called Koh Sang, and it follows two main characters, two narrators, who both, well, one lives on Koh Sang. Her name is Cass. She's an expat and a scuba diving instructor there. And the other is Brooke, who's a travel influencer who's come to the island. And both, you know, it's a thriller, so both have a lot of secrets. They have very specific reasons for being on Koh Sang. And then, you know, within a few weeks of Brooke arriving, a dead guest is found at the resort. And that has, you know, kind of throws everything into chaos, and people are scrambling to cover up their secrets. And both of these girls must figure out how far they'll go to keep their past hidden.
Sounds great.
So is this likely to be a standalone book, a trilogy, or a whole series? Have you any further plans, or are you working on another one now?
So it's the plan is that it's a standalone. I'm not planning a sequel for it at this point. But I am actually in the very, very early process of writing a second book, but it's unrelated to the dive.
You mentioned that you're a huge reader, you're a fiction fan.
Yeah.
Do you read a similar type of genres? Is it thriller fictions that you read? Do you have your favorite authors?
Yeah, I do. It is just really basically thrillers. I'm a huge thriller fanatic. Like suspense. I like a little bit of horror as well. But favorite authors, that's a tough one. Well, Alex Garland, first of all, The Beach is hands down my favorite book.
What did you make of the film? Do you think the film has dealt well with the book, do you think? Or would you prefer the book?
I prefer the book.
Yeah, myself.
I mean, I usually do. I think, I mean, the film, I don't think that it follows, you know, the book as closely as I like, but I mean, that setting in that film really can't go wrong with it. It's absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, always the book. But other favorite authors, Lucy Foley, Kat Stedman, Amy McCulloch, Andrea Bartz. I've got a pretty long list of them, I think.
Going back to, we talked about this potential film that could or could not be. Would you have any ideas who you'd like to see cast as the leading characters in the film if it came to it?
Oh my God!
I know it's a hypothetical question, really, but you know.
It is, and I don't have a good answer for that. You would think by now I would have thought this through, but I really don't. I think it's like, if I find someone that I think would play it, I'm just jinxing. I would jinx it at this point. That's a great question. I don't know. I'll have to, once you guys read it, I'll have to come back and see if you have any suggestions.
That's a great answer.
That's a great answer. Yeah,
It is. Yeah. Sarah, can I ask about your writing routine? Do you have a special place? Have you got like a writing retreat? Have you got a log cabin over there in Sweden, or a sauna that you go and sit in?
Oh my gosh.
Sauna.
I could say yes, because that is the dream. But actually, I don't know if there's an author. He's represented by Blake Friedman as well. His name is Will Dean, and he lives out in the middle of a moose forest in Sweden. And he has this tiny little cottage that he writes in, a little cabin, and it's so atmospheric and wonderful. And I unfortunately do not have that at the moment. I do have, a little room with a window, but nothing too atmospheric or lovely like that, unfortunately.
When you sell the film rights, you can build one next door.
Yeah. That's the plan, sauna included. Yeah,
Wow.
for sure.
Yeah. We mentioned before, you've got a publisher, which is brilliant, and you've got one of the best. Did you consider going self-publishing in the early days, and was it a realistic option for you? I know that probably means more work for you. So what did you think of that option?
So I hadn't really considered self-publishing. I'd always been drawn to that more, traditional publishing route. I liked the idea of having professionals in the field actually reviewing my work and editing it before it went out, because when I started writing this, I didn't know any other authors. I didn't have really a writing community. So actually nobody read this book before I sent it to my agent. So I think the idea of self-publishing at that point and just sending it out into the world before I had, validation, I suppose, that it was worth reading, that was really nerve-wracking for me. So I didn't really consider it. And there is so much work that goes into it as an author, because you have to deal with all the marketing and publicity and all of that stuff, and that is not really, my skill set at all. So thankfully, the traditional publishing route worked out, but I'm so in awe of authors who self-publish. I think it's amazing.
We often hear that the authors, they go through sometimes, many years of heartache, trying to sending out that submission letter, waiting 6 months, sometimes not even getting a reply, but the rejection letters piling up. And so they end up being forced down the route of self-publishing.
Yes, right. Yeah. And querying agents and also having my agent, that submission process for submitting the manuscript to publishers. Those rejections, man, they are rough. And then even worse is when you don't hear, don't hear anything. I think that's worse than a rejection. It
builds on your confidence, doesn't it? Or knocks your confidence down.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I try, and something I try to keep in mind is that, a rejection doesn't necessarily, shouldn't tie to your self-worth or tie to the value of your work. There's so many things that are going on behind the scenes at agencies and at publishers. You might have an amazing book and an agent just doesn't specifically connect with it, or a publisher is looking for something slightly different, but it's still so hard. It takes a toll on your confidence big time.
Yeah. You've got the publisher, but obviously you still want to promote your book yourself. So you're using social media, obviously Twitter. Do you use other social media like TikTok and Facebook or others?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm such a social media novice. I've had a personal Instagram for a long time that I just use for friends and family. So I've created an Instagram account, an author Instagram account, and I've created my Twitter, and that's basically the extent of it. So I'm trying to figure out, how Twitter works and how to connect with people and all of that. But I also think I joined at probably the worst time.
Oh, it's going through a state of confusion, isn't it? So many people are saying they've lost that many followers.
Yeah.
And people have been leaving the platform, moving on to Mastodon, and well, others as well.
Yes. I was like, I just got here and everyone's gone. I cannot be bothered to join this new platform. So we'll see. Hopefully Twitter recovers, but it's been really nice so far. I mean, I had a Twitter for work, and I know that for my, legal jobs, and I know things tend to get a bit heated on Twitter, a bit controversial. But I have to say, having this new account and just everyone I follow and everyone who follows me is kind of in that book, the book Twitter field, I suppose. And everyone is just so kind and welcoming, and it's a whole new experience.
Just going back to your writing routine as well, I know you said that the plot, it's sort of based on your personal experiences.
Yeah.
During the writing routine, are you the type of person who puts sticky notes all over the wall? Do you have little notes? Do you have a notepad, or you go straight to keyboard?
I do eventually. I don't. The Post-its do come in at some point, but not at the beginning. Really, kind of what I do is I've been trying to outline. I've been trying to plot out my books before I write them, and it just does not work for me.
Okay.
I'm too impatient, I think. So I can't just sit there and plan everything out. I also kind of like to see how things unfold as I write. So I do, what I generally do is write, I call it, either a 0 draft or a 0.5 draft, which is somewhere between an outline and a first draft. It'll basically be a really, really, really bad first draft with huge things missing, huge chunks where I say, come back to this, or probably insert a scene about this later. But it just kind of is a way for me to understand the story and kind of get a plot line and get something in writing. And then once I reach the end of that, or, I get 75% of the way into the book and I can see how it ends, then I'll go back and start writing it out as an actual first draft. And that's where I'll break out those Post-its and see, do I need to move things around now that I have an idea of this plot line? When exactly should everything happen? Should things be earlier, and kind of figure it out that way.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, but when we're talking about Post-it notes there, when you write your book, do you start with a natural beginning and lead up to the end, or do you? Because we listen to some authors and they'll tell us that they have an ending in the head and they'll write the book around that, and some people have it completely the other way around, and some people write a start and then, just as you're saying, just add here and there. Which way do you find works best for you?
So I guess it depends on the book, because I'm realizing my second book is totally different. It's a totally different process than my first book. But for The Dive, I didn't know exactly how it would end until I was fully through that first completely finished first draft. I had the beginning in mind and I had a couple scenes in mind, but the ending I was always kind of, unclear on, I suppose, until that full first draft. Whereas for my second book, I know the ending, but I don't have any idea what happens in the middle. I know the beginning and I know the end, and the middle is still a mystery to me. So hopefully I get there one day soon.
I chatted to one writer. He's got a series of about 18 crime novels. And I asked him, did he create like a Bible for the character, for different characters' eye colors and things? And he said, no, I deliberately don't do that, which is the opposite of what most of the writers say. But he said it keeps it fresh in his mind. He said, if I don't know things about this character, if I'm learning from them, the audience as well, and the readers will be learning with me.
Yeah.
But that's really different means for different writers. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone, it's, what works for you.
Yeah.
I guess it's such a different process, writer to writer.
And I spoke to an author not so long ago who was talking about a character late on in the book and realized that they'd actually killed them off in chapter 3. And it's things like that. And it was a comedy book as it happened, so she'd have probably got away with it. But that's the sort of thing I would have a Bible for. So right, what have I done with this character? But everyone's different.
That's a huge plot twist.
Yeah. Was that Gina Kirkham, was it, Steve?
Actually it was, yeah.
I thought so. New book, is that complete? Have you got a publication date in mind? Is that the year after?
I have a 2-book deal
Yeah.
with Transworld, and I know that my draft of it is due in the summer of this
Okay.
year, and I believe it'll be published. Oh, I might be lying about this. I think it'll be published. The plan is to publish in 2024, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
What advice would you give to a new writer out there who was writing a book for the first time? And well, yeah, go on. Tell me what advice you'd give them.
So I guess it's kind of advice that I really need to be listening to myself and telling myself at this point as I write book 2. And it's not very, eloquently worded, but I think my best advice would just be, it's when you first start, it's gonna be crap. Like what you're writing,
Yeah.
it's gonna be crap. I mean, everyone starts that way. Like, and I think the key is really just sticking with it. I mean, it's so easy to compare your first draft to all of these published books out there, and think like, oh, why can't I write like Lucy Foley? Like she just wrote this first draft and it was published. You kind of forget, all the behind the scenes things and all of the many, many eyes that have been on this and edits and all of that. But I think really just letting your first draft be bad and just getting something on the paper and sticking with it is the key.
That's brilliant advice.
Sounds good advice to me.
Does? Yeah. But Sarah, on that note, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and let's do it again on the second book release, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Or when the film premiere, the night before the film premiere.
Oh, that would be nice.
Yeah. I'll invite you guys to the red carpet for sure.
Brilliant.
Oh, thanks. I'd appreciate that so much.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, for now though, Sarah, thank you very much. Let's keep in touch as we have been.
Yes, I would love that. It was so great to meet and talk with you guys.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, Sarah.
Thank you.